The evening air was thick with the scent of street food and the noise of 1,000 conversations as Rahim Malik hurried through the crowded Lahore railway station. His calloused hand held firmly onto his daughter Amara's smaller one, making sure the 8-year-old wouldn't get lost in the sea of travelers rushing to catch their trains. "Baba, I'm tired," Amara said, her small feet struggling to keep up with her father's quick pace. The plastic bag of groceries they'd managed to buy with the last of this week's money swung from her other hand. "Just a little further, John," Rahim replied, his voice gentle despite his exhaustion. The double shift at the hospital had left dark circles under his eyes. 12 hours of mopping floors, cleaning bathrooms, and taking out trash had drained every ounce of energy from his body. But he couldn't afford to rest, not when Amara's school fees were due next week. The evening train was their only way home to the small 2-room flat they rented on the outskirts of the city. Missing it would mean waiting another hour, and Rahim needed what little sleep he could get before his 5 a.m. shift. As they navigated around a group of tourists with their oversized luggage, Rahim's attention was caught by a commotion near the edge of Platform 3. An elderly man in a wheelchair was stuck at the bottom of a small set of steps, his wheels unable to climb the obstacle. The man's face showed frustration as people streamed past, too busy with their own journeys to notice his struggle. "Wait here for just a minute," Rahim told Amara, guiding her to a nearby bench where she could sit with their groceries. "I'll be right back." "But Baba, our train will wait," he finished with a smile that hid his worry about potentially missing their ride home. Rahim approached the elderly man, whose weathered face brightened slightly as someone finally stopped to help. Up close, Rahim could see that despite the expensive-looking wheelchair, the man wore simple clothes, a plain white kurta and loose pants that had seen better days. "Assalamu alaikum, uncle," Rahim said respectfully.
"Can I help you with these steps?"
The old man looked up, relief washing over his face. "Walaikum assalam, beta. Thank you for stopping. My attendant went to buy a ticket and hasn't returned. I've been waiting for nearly half an hour." Rahim nodded sympathetically. "These stations can be confusing. Let me help you up these steps." With careful movements, Rahim positioned himself behind the wheelchair and tilted it back slightly. The chair was heavier than he expected, and the strain made his already tired muscles burn. But Rahim had never been one to leave a job half done. With a deep breath, he pushed forward, lifting the front wheels onto the first step, then the second. The old man gripped the armrest tightly. "You're very strong, young man." Rahim smiled through his effort. "Not strong, uncle. Just stubborn." Once they reached the platform, Rahim wiped sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. The station clock showed 7:45 p.m. Their train would arrive in 10 minutes. "Thank you, Beta," the old man said, his eyes crinkling with genuine gratitude. "My name is Ibrahim." "Rahim," he replied with a slight nod. "And that's my daughter Amara." He gestured toward the bench where Amara sat watching them curiously. Ibrahim's eyes seemed to take in everything about them. The patches on Rahim's faded blue uniform, the slightly too small shoes on Amara's feet, the thin grocery bag that would need to feed them for days. But there was no pity in his gaze, only a thoughtful interest. "Your attendant should be back soon," Rahim said, already stepping away. "We have a train to catch." "Which platform?" Ibrahim asked. "Platform 6, the 7:55 to Shadara." Ibrahim nodded. "Thank you again for your help." Not many would stop, especially when they're in a hurry themselves. Rahim shrugged. "My mother always said that kindness costs nothing but means everything." He smiled, thinking of his late mother's wisdom. "Take care, uncle." As Rahim turned to leave, a commotion erupted at the far end of the platform. A group of travelers with massive luggage had blocked the main passage, and station security was trying to clear the way. The delay would make it difficult for Rahim and Amara to reach Platform 6 in time. Rahim sighed and looked back at Ibrahim, who sat watching the same scene with concern. Something about the old man's dignified manner, despite his circumstances, reminded Rahim of his own father, a hard-working man who never complained even when life was difficult. "Baba," Amara called out, pointing at the clock. 8 minutes until their train. Rahim waved to show he was coming, taking one last look at Ibrahim. The old man raised his hand in farewell, a gesture filled with more meaning than either could have known in that moment. As Rahim hurried back to Amara, he had no way of knowing that this brief encounter at Lahore railway station would change the course of their lives forever. He was simply a tired father trying to make it through another day, unaware that sometimes the most important moments come disguised as ordinary acts of kindness. "Come on, John," Rahim said, taking the grocery bag from Amara and offering his hand. "If we hurry, we might still make it." Together they raced toward Platform 6, two figures among thousands in the busy station, carrying their hopes for a better tomorrow with each step. Rahim and Amara had nearly reached Platform 6 when the station announcement system crackled to life. The 7:55 train to Shadara would be delayed by 15 minutes due to a signal problem. Rahim's shoulders relaxed slightly at the news. They hadn't missed their train after all. "Can we get some chai while we wait, Baba?" Amara asked, her eyes hopeful as she pointed to a small stall nearby. Rahim mentally calculated the money left in his pocket. 20 rupees, enough for 1 cup. "We'll share one," he said with a wink that made his daughter smile. These small moments of joy were what kept him going through the hardest days. As they sipped the sweet tea, taking turns with the single cup, Rahim couldn't help but glance back toward Platform 3. The old man, Ibrahim, was still there, looking increasingly worried as he checked his watch. There was still no sign of the attendant who had abandoned him. "Baba, that uncle still needs help," Amara said, following her father's gaze. Sometimes Rahim thought his daughter could read his mind. "Our train will be here soon," Rahim said, though he already knew what he was going to do. He had never been able to walk away from someone in need, even when helping meant making things harder for himself. It was both his greatest strength and his biggest weakness, according to his late wife, Noor. Amara nodded solemnly. Mama would say we should help him. The mention of Noor sent a familiar pang through Rahim's heart. 3 years had passed since the fever had taken her, but some days the loss felt as fresh as yesterday. She had been the one who taught Amara that kindness matters most when it's inconvenient. "You're right, John," Rahim said, finishing the last sip of chai. "Let's go see if he needs help finding his attendant." They returned to Platform 3, where Ibrahim's face brightened at the sight of them. "I thought you had caught your train," he said. "It's delayed," Rahim explained. "Is your attendant still missing?" Ibrahim's expression darkened. "I'm afraid he won't be returning. The station manager just informed me that a man matching his description was seen leaving with my bag. It seems I've been robbed by the very person I hired to assist me." Rahim frowned. "Have you called someone to help you?" "My driver is waiting on the other side of the station," Ibrahim explained. "But with this crowd and these stairs between platforms..." He gestured helplessly at his wheelchair. Rahim looked at the station clock. Their train would arrive in 12 minutes. If they helped Ibrahim across the station, they might still make it back in time, if they hurried. "We'll help you reach your driver," Rahim decided. "Amara, can you carry our groceries and walk ahead to make sure the path is clear?" Amara nodded eagerly, taking her role seriously as they began their journey across the massive station. Rahim pushed Ibrahim's wheelchair, navigating through the evening crowd with patience born from years of making do with whatever life offered. As they moved, Ibrahim asked questions about Rahim's life. Not the prying kind that made Rahim uncomfortable, but genuine interest in who he was. "You mentioned you work at a hospital?" Ibrahim asked as they waited for a group of travelers to move aside. "As a janitor at Jinnah Hospital," Rahim replied. "It's not glamorous, but the pay is steady and they allow me to adjust my schedule around Amara's school." "And her mother?" Ibrahim asked gently. "Passed away 3 years ago. Typhoid fever." Rahim's voice grew softer. "Noor was a primary school teacher. The smartest person I've ever known." Ibrahim nodded respectfully. "I'm sorry for your loss. Raising a child alone cannot be easy." "We manage," Rahim said, the simple phrase covering years of struggle and sacrifice. "Amara is worth every effort." Ahead of them, Amara was taking her pathfinding duties seriously, politely asking people to make way for a wheelchair. Her confidence made Rahim's chest swell with pride. "She's quite remarkable," Ibrahim observed. "You've raised her well." "That was mostly her mother's doing," Rahim admitted. "Noor made sure Amara had books even when we couldn't afford new clothes. She believed education was the only thing no one could take away from you." "A wise woman," Ibrahim agreed. "What would you be doing if you weren't working as a janitor?" The question caught Rahim off guard. No one had asked about his dreams in years. "I've always loved books," he confessed. "Before Noor got sick, we talked about saving enough to open a small bookshop someday. Nothing fancy, just a place where neighborhood children could discover stories the way we did growing up." Ibrahim fell silent, seeming lost in thought as they approached the far exit of the station. Through the glass doors, they could see a modest white sedan waiting. "That's my driver," Ibrahim confirmed. "Thank you, Rahim. You've shown extraordinary kindness to a stranger today." Rahim checked the time again. If they ran, they might still make their train. "It was nothing, Uncle. Anyone would have done the same." Ibrahim's eyes crinkled with wisdom. "No, Beta. Not everyone would sacrifice their time and comfort for an old man they've never met. This world moves too quickly for such kindness sometimes." As they reached the car, Ibrahim's driver hurried out to help. The man looked surprised to see Ibrahim with strangers instead of the hired attendant. "These good people helped me when Wasim abandoned his duties," Ibrahim explained to the driver. "Please give them a ride home as thanks." Rahim quickly shook his head. "No need for that, Uncle. Our train—" He stopped, realizing they had spent nearly 20 minutes helping Ibrahim across the station. The 7:55 train would be leaving any minute if it hadn't already departed. Ibrahim seemed to read the situation in Rahim's face. "At least let us drive you to your stop. It's the least I can do." Before Rahim could protest further, Amara tugged at his sleeve. "Baba, I'm tired," she whispered. The thought of waiting another hour for the next train with Amara already exhausted and hungry made the decision easier. "Thank you," Rahim said finally. "That's very kind." As the driver helped Ibrahim into the car, Rahim noticed that despite the luxury of having a personal driver, the vehicle was surprisingly modest, a simple sedan rather than the luxury car he might have expected. It was another detail that didn't quite fit with Rahim's initial impression of the old man. Once they were all seated, with Amara already half asleep against her father's arm, Ibrahim asked for their address. Rahim gave the location of their neighborhood, feeling slightly embarrassed by its modest reputation. "It's not much," he said quietly, "but the rent is affordable and the neighbors look out for each other." Ibrahim nodded approvingly. A home is made by the people in it, not by its walls. As the car pulled away from the station, Rahim felt an unusual sense of peace wash over him. He had missed his train and would get less sleep than he'd hoped for, but somehow it seemed worth it. There was something about Ibrahim that reminded him of simpler times, when people helped each other without question. Little did Rahim know that his simple act of kindness at the train station had set larger wheels in motion, ones that would soon change the course of his and Amara's lives in ways he couldn't begin to imagine. 3 days had passed since the encounter at the train station. Rahim had all but forgotten about Ibrahim as he focused on the everyday challenges of making ends meet. Today's shift at the hospital had been particularly exhausting. A stomach virus outbreak had meant extra cleaning duties throughout the pediatric ward. Rahim's mop moved rhythmically across the floor of the hospital corridor. His shoulders ached from the repetitive motion, but he took pride in the gleaming surface left in his wake. Clean floors meant fewer germs, which meant healthier children. It wasn't saving lives the way doctors did, but it mattered in its own small way. "Mr. Malik?" A voice interrupted his thoughts. Rahim looked up to see Nurse Fatima approaching. "There's someone asking for you at the reception desk. Says it's important." Rahim frowned, instantly worried. Amara was at her neighbor Auntie Parveen's house after school as usual. Had something happened? "Did they say what it's about?" he asked, already setting his mop aside. "Some man in a fancy suit. Looks like a lawyer type," Nurse Fatima said with a shrug. "Very polite, though. A lawyer?" Rahim couldn't imagine why any lawyer would want to speak with him. He hadn't been in any accidents, hadn't signed any contracts. A knot of worry formed in his stomach as he made his way to the reception area. The man waiting for him stood out starkly against the busy hospital backdrop. His charcoal suit was impeccably tailored, his leather briefcase expensive without being flashy. When he spotted Rahim in his janitor's uniform, he extended a hand without hesitation. "Mr. Rahim Malik, my name is Tariq Ahmed. I represent Ibrahim Hashmi."
"Do you have a moment to talk?"
The name Ibrahim sparked a memory of the elderly man at the train station, but Hashmi meant nothing to Rahim. Still, he shook the lawyer's hand, noticing how his own calloused palm contrasted with the man's smooth skin. "I have a short break in 15 minutes, Rahim said cautiously. Tariq nodded. "I'll wait in the cafeteria. This won't take long, but it's important." 15 minutes later, Rahim sat across from Tariq at a small cafeteria table, still in his work uniform, feeling decidedly out of place. First, Let me properly introduce my client, Tariq began, opening his briefcase and removing a folder. Ibrahim Hashmi is the founder and chairman emeritus of Hashmi Industries. Perhaps you've heard of it. Rahim's eyes widened slightly. Even someone who paid little attention to business news knew Hashmi Industries, one of the largest manufacturing companies in Pakistan, with factories across the country. They made everything from textiles to electronics. The Ibrahim Hashmi? But he was just... Rahim trailed off, recalling the simple clothes, the modest car. Tariq smiled. Yes, Mr. Hashmi prefers to move through the world without attracting attention. He finds people are more genuine when they don't know his net worth. Rahim's mind raced. He had helped one of the wealthiest men in Pakistan across a train station, completely unaware of who he was. The thought was so absurd he almost laughed. Mr. Hashmi was deeply impressed by your willingness to help him at great inconvenience to yourself, Tariq continued, especially when you had your daughter to consider and were clearly tired from work. He said, and I quote, Rahim Malik showed the kind of character that can't be bought or taught. Heat rose to Rahim's cheeks. I didn't do anything special, just what anyone would do. Mr. Hashmi disagrees, Tariq said, sliding a photograph across the table. He believes you did what few would bother to do in today's world. And he'd like to thank you properly. The photograph showed a small corner shop with large windows. A faded sign above read Kitabgar, House of Books. The building was worn but charming, located on what looked like a quiet street in an older part of the city. What is this? Rahim asked, confused. This is a bookshop that has been closed for nearly 15 years, Tariq explained. It belonged to Mrs. Hashmi before her passing. Mr. Hashmi has kept the property but couldn't bear to sell it or reopen it. Until now. Rahim looked up from the photo, still not understanding. Mr. Hashmi would like to offer you a job. Mr. Malik. As the manager of this bookshop, which he intends to renovate and reopen. Rahim sat back, certain he had misheard. A job managing a bookshop? But I don't have any experience in retail or business. I'm a janitor. You told Mr. Hashmi that you and your late wife dreamed of opening a bookshop someday, Tariq reminded him. He believes you have the passion for books and the work ethic required. The technical aspects can be learned. Rahim remembered mentioning that dream during their conversation, but was stunned that Ibrahim had taken it so seriously. I don't understand why he would do this for a stranger. Tariq's expression softened slightly. Mr. Hashmi is in his 80s, Mr. Malik. At that age, people often reflect on legacy and meaning. Sometimes an encounter, even a brief one, can have profound impact. What would this job involve? And what's the pay? Rahim asked, practical concerns pushing through his disbelief. Tariq slid a document across the table. The details are all here. The position includes overseeing the renovation, selecting inventory, hiring 1 or 2 assistants, and managing day-to-day operations once the shop opens. The salary is 75,000 rupees per month, with health benefits for you and your daughter. Working hours would be 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. 6 days a week. Rahim stared at the figure. It was 5 times what he currently earned. Enough to move to a better apartment. Enough to start saving for Amara's university education. Enough to stop working himself to exhaustion with double shifts. It was too good to be true. That was Rahim's first thought, followed immediately by suspicion. His whole life had taught him that nothing came without a catch. What does Mr. Hashmi want in return? He asked bluntly. Tariq seemed to appreciate the directness. He wants the bookshop to succeed and become a positive presence in the community. That's all. There are no hidden conditions. Rahim shook his head, still unable to process the offer. I need time to think about this. It's overwhelming. Of course, Tariq agreed, closing his briefcase. He placed a business card on the table. Take a week. Call this number when you've decided. Whatever you choose, Mr. Hashmi wanted you to know that meeting you restored some of his faith in humanity. After Tariq left, Rahim remained seated, staring at the business card. The hospital cafeteria buzzed around him, but he barely noticed. His mind filled with possibilities he had never dared to imagine. Could this be real? Could his life change so dramatically because of one simple act of kindness? Part of him wanted to call the number immediately and accept before the offer could vanish. But the cautious part, the part that had learned through hard experience that life rarely gave gifts without taking something in return, held him back. When his break ended, Rahim tucked the card into his pocket and returned to his mop and bucket. As he cleaned, his thoughts kept returning to the photograph of the bookshop. Despite his doubts, he couldn't help but picture Amara sitting in a corner with a book, just as her mother would have wanted. That night, after tucking Amara into bed, Rahim sat at their small kitchen table with the lawyer's card and the document detailing the job offer. He read every word carefully, looking for the trap, the catch, the fine print that would reveal the true cost of this opportunity. But there was none. Just an old man's generosity and a second chance at a dream Rahim had thought was lost forever. "What do you think, Noor?" he whispered to the empty room, imagining what his wife would say if she were still here. He could almost hear her practical voice telling him not to be stubborn, to accept help when it was offered with good intentions. Still uncertain, but with a glimmer of hope taking root in his heart, Rahim decided to do something he rarely allowed himself. He began to dream of a different future, one where Amara could grow up without the constant shadow of financial struggle, where books and learning could be at the center of their lives. Just as Noor had always wanted, sleep came easier that night than it had in years. A week had passed since the lawyer's visit, and Rahim still hadn't called the number on the card. Every evening after putting Amara to bed, he would take out the card and stare at it, turning it over in his hands as if it might reveal some hidden truth. "Baba, why do you look so worried all the time?" Amara asked one morning as they walked to her school. Her small hand felt warm in his, a constant reminder of why every decision he made mattered so much. Rahim smiled down at her. "Just grown-up things, John. Nothing for you to worry about." "Is it about the man in the suit who came to see you?" Amara was too observant for her own good, just like her mother had been. Rahim sighed. He had told Amara about the offer in simple terms, that someone wanted him to run a bookshop, but hadn't mentioned the details, or that the offer came from Ibrahim. "Yes," he admitted. "He offered me a new job. A better job. But I'm not sure if I should take it. Why not?" Amara asked with the straightforward logic of childhood. "You always said you loved books, and Mama loved them too." "It's complicated," Rahim tried to explain. "Sometimes when things seem too good to be true, they are." Amara considered this as they approached her school gate. "Auntie Parveen says that Allah sends help in unexpected ways and we shouldn't be too proud to accept it." Rahim chuckled. "When did you get so wise?" Amara shrugged, grinning. "I listen a lot, especially when adults think I'm not." As he watched her join her classmates in the schoolyard, Rahim thought about her words. Was it pride holding him back or fear? He had grown so used to struggle that the prospect of an easier path seemed almost more frightening than continuing as they were. That evening, after a particularly grueling shift at the hospital, Rahim made his decision. He would at least go see this bookshop before making up his mind. He owed it to Amara and to Noor's memory to explore the possibility. The next morning, Rahim called the number on the card. To his surprise, Ibrahim himself answered. "Ah, Rahim," the old man said, as if they were old friends. "I was beginning to think you might not call." "I'm still not sure about the job," Rahim said honestly, "but I'd like to see the bookshop if that's possible." "Of course," Ibrahim replied, sounding pleased. "Can you come tomorrow morning?" "I'll meet you there." The address was in an older part of the city, an area that had once been fashionable but had faded as newer neighborhoods developed. Still, it had character. Narrow streets lined with colonial-era buildings, small shops and food stalls that had served generations of customers. The next day, Rahim took a day off from the hospital, left Amara with Auntie Parveen, and made his way to the address. The bookshop stood on a quiet corner, just as it had appeared in the photograph. The faded sign, Kitab Gar, hung slightly crooked above a dusty window display. As Rahim approached, he noticed a car parked nearby, the same modest sedan that had driven them home from the train station. Ibrahim sat in his wheelchair beside it, his driver standing attentively nearby. "You came," Ibrahim said with a smile that crinkled his entire face. Up close in the morning light, Rahim could see that Ibrahim was older than he'd first thought, perhaps in his early 80s, but his eyes remained bright and alert. "I said I would," Rahim replied simply. Ibrahim gestured to the shop. "Shall we go inside?" "I have the keys." The driver moved forward to help, but Ibrahim waved him back. "Rahim can assist me. Please wait here, Saeed." Together they made their way to the shop's entrance. Rahim carefully navigating the wheelchair over the uneven pavement. Ibrahim handed him an old brass key. "Would you do the honors?" he asked. Rahim unlocked the door, which creaked open to reveal a space frozen in time. Dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight that broke through the partially covered windows. Empty bookshelves lined the walls, and a wooden counter stood at the back. The air smelled of old paper and memories. "My wife Samina opened this shop in 1970, Ibrahim said softly as Rahim pushed his wheelchair inside. She was a literature professor who believed books could change lives. She ran it for 30 years before her illness made it impossible to continue. Rahim moved carefully through the space, running his fingers along the empty shelves, imagining them filled with books of all kinds. Despite the dust and neglect, he could feel the soul of the place, the decades of stories that had passed through its doors. "It needs work," he observed. "But the bones are good." Ibrahim nodded approvingly at the assessment. "Yes, exactly. That's what Samina always said about it, too. The bones are good. After she died, I couldn't bear to sell it, but I also couldn't bring myself to come here often. It reminded me too much of her." "Why now?" Rahim asked, turning to face the old man. "Why me?" Ibrahim wheeled himself toward the center of the shop, looking around as if seeing ghosts of happier times. "When my wife was dying, she made me promise not to let the shop stay empty forever. Find someone who loves books the way I do," she said. "Someone who understands that stories are more than just words on paper." He paused, his weathered hands resting in his lap. "For 15 years, I failed to keep that promise. Either I couldn't find the right person, or I wasn't truly ready to let go. Then at that train station, when you helped me despite your own troubles, when you spoke of books with such longing in your voice, I knew." Rahim felt a lump form in his throat. "I don't know the first thing about running a bookshop." "But you know why bookshops matter," Ibrahim countered. "The rest can be learned. Tariq has arranged for you to meet with a successful bookseller in Islamabad who can mentor you on the business aspects. The renovation team is ready whenever you say the word. The only question is, do you want this, Rahim?" Rahim walked slowly around the space, trying to picture himself here day after day, surrounded by books, helping customers find stories that would mean something to them. He thought of Amara growing up in this environment, doing homework at that counter, learning the names of authors and the magic of different genres. He thought of Noor, who had filled their tiny apartment with second-hand books even when they could barely afford rice. "If I say yes," Rahim said carefully, "I would want to make some changes, to modernize certain aspects, add a children's corner, maybe a small space for readings and events." Ibrahim's face lit up. "Yes, all of that. Samina would have loved those ideas. The shop should evolve, not just reopen as a museum piece. And what happens if it fails? If I can't make it profitable? The shop is paid for, no rent, no mortgage. The startup costs and your salary for the first 2 years are covered regardless of profit. After that, we assess." "But Rahim," Ibrahim leaned forward in his wheelchair, his expression earnest, "I'm not expecting this to make me money. This is about legacy, not profit." Rahim nodded slowly, his mind made up. "Then yes, I'll do it." Ibrahim extended his hand and Rahim shook it, feeling the surprising strength in the old man's grip. "There's one more thing," Ibrahim said, his eyes twinkling.
"What will you call it?"
"A fresh start deserves a fresh name, I think." Rahim hadn't considered this. The name came to him without thought, rising from his heart before his mind could analyze it. "Amara's books," he said softly. "After my daughter. And also because Amara means eternal in Arabic. Books are eternal in a way." Ibrahim's eyes grew misty. Samina would have liked that very much. "Amara's books it is." As they left the shop, locking the door behind them with a sense of ceremony, Rahim felt a weight lift from his shoulders. For the first time since Noor's death, he was moving toward something, not just surviving day to day. "When can I start?" he asked. Ibrahim smiled. "How about today? Give your notice at the hospital, and by the time your 2 weeks are up, we'll be ready to begin renovations. I've already spoken to the contractor. He's waiting for your input on the design." Rahim looked back at the shop, his shop now, in a way, and felt a surge of something he hadn't experienced in years, excitement about the future. "Today's perfect," he said. As Ibrahim's driver helped the old man back into the car, Rahim noticed something he hadn't before. On the back of Ibrahim's wheelchair was a small worn sticker, a quote from a famous poet that read, "Books are the plane and the train and the road. They are the destination and the journey." It seemed that the encounter at the train station had been destined from the start. 6 months passed in a whirlwind of activity. The dusty old bookshop transformed under Rahim's careful guidance, just as his life had transformed since that fateful evening at the train station. The grand opening of Amara's books was scheduled for tomorrow morning, and Rahim stood in the center of the shop taking it all in. The walls had been painted a warm cream color, the wooden floors sanded and polished to reveal their original beauty. New lighting brightened the space without being harsh, and comfortable chairs were placed strategically throughout, inviting readers to sit and sample a book before buying. The children's corner, which had been Rahim's passion project, was especially charming. Low bookshelves, colorful cushions, and a hand-painted mural of a magical forest created a space where young imaginations could flourish. Amara had helped to choose every detail, her excitement growing as the shop took shape. The bell above the door jingled, and Rahim turned to see Ibrahim entering, his wheelchair now navigated by a new attendant, one who had come with excellent references and a kind manner. "It's magnificent," Ibrahim said, looking around with undisguised joy. "Better than I could have imagined." Rahim smiled, the praise warming him. Over the past months, he and Ibrahim had grown close. What had begun as an employer-employee relationship had evolved into something more like family. Ibrahim often joked that at 82, he'd finally found the son he never had. "Wait until you see the special section," Rahim said, leading Ibrahim to a wall near the counter. There, in a beautiful glass case, sat a collection of rare first editions and signed copies, books that had belonged to Ibrahim's late wife, Samina. Rahim had discovered them in boxes in the storage room and had them professionally restored. A small brass plaque on the case read, "The Samina Hashmi Collection for Love of Literature." Ibrahim stared at the display, his eyes filling with tears. "You found her books," he whispered. "I couldn't bear to look at them after she passed. I just packed them away. They deserve to be seen," Rahim said gently. "They're not for sale, of course, just for display and inspiration." Ibrahim reached out and touched the glass as if trying to connect with his wife's memory. "Samina would have loved what you've done here. All of it." The door chimed again and Amara burst in, followed by Auntie Parveen, who had become Amara's after-school caretaker on days when Rahim worked late at the shop. "Baba, is everything ready for tomorrow?" Amara asked, her school uniform slightly rumpled from a day of learning and play. "Almost," Rahim replied, lifting her up for a quick hug. At 9 years old, she was getting too big for such gestures, but she still allowed it, when excitement overcame her growing sense of maturity. "Ibrahim, uncle." Amara wiggled free from her father and went to greet the old man with a respectful but affectionate bow. Their friendship had blossomed over the months, with Ibrahim often bringing her books from his own collection and listening patiently as she shared her thoughts on them. "Little Miss Bookshop," Ibrahim greeted her with their usual joke. "Ready for your big day tomorrow?" "Yes, I'm going to help with the cash register and the children's story time," Amara announced proudly. "Baba has been teaching me how to make change and recommend books." Ibrahim chuckled. "A businesswoman already. Soon you'll be running the whole operation." "That's the plan," Amara replied seriously, making both men laugh. As evening approached, more visitors arrived. The 2 part-time assistants Rahim had hired, neighbors curious about the new shop, even Nurse Fatima and a few other colleagues from the hospital who had supported Rahim's career change. The small gathering turned into an impromptu pre-opening celebration. Someone brought samosas, another brought chai, and soon the shop was filled with conversation and laughter. Rahim watched it all with a sense of wonder. 6 months ago, he had been mopping hospital floors, exhausted and barely getting by. Now he stood in his own bookshop. Well, Ibrahim's bookshop technically, but it felt like his in all the ways that mattered. Later, after the guests had left and Amara was helping straighten books for the next day, Ibrahim beckoned Rahim to join him near the front window. "I have something for you," the old man said, handing Rahim an envelope. "A pre-opening gift, you might say." Rahim opened it to find legal documents. He skimmed them, his eyes growing wider with each paragraph. "This is, you're transferring ownership of the shop to me?" "Ibrahim, I can't accept this." Ibrahim held up a hand to stop his protests. "Not immediately. It's structured as a gradual transfer over 5 years. By then you'll have earned it completely." Consider it a long-term investment in you and in the community this shop will serve. But why? Rahim asked, genuinely confused by the magnitude of the gift. Ibrahim looked out the window at the quiet street, now bathed in the golden light of sunset. When you reach my age, Rahim, you think a lot about what you'll leave behind. Money? I have more than enough, and most of it will go to various charities. Possessions? They're just things. What matters is touching lives in ways that continue after you're gone. He turned back to Rahim, his eyes clear and determined. That day at the train station, you didn't just help an old man in a wheelchair. You showed me that kindness still exists in a world that often seems to have forgotten it. This shop, your shop now, will be a place where stories are shared, where minds are opened, where children like Amara grow up believing in possibilities. That's a legacy worth investing in. Rahim wanted to protest further, to say that the job and salary were more than enough, that he couldn't possibly accept such generosity. But looking at Ibrahim's face, he understood that refusing would cause more pain than accepting. Thank you, he said simply, tucking the envelope carefully into his pocket. I'll make sure it's always worthy of Samina's memory. Ibrahim nodded, satisfied. I know you will. The next morning, a small crowd gathered outside Amara's books for the grand opening. Rahim had worried that few people would come, but word had spread through the neighborhood. Local teachers brought their classes, parents with young children waited eagerly, and even a reporter from a small community newspaper showed up to cover the story. Ibrahim insisted that Rahim and Amara should cut the ribbon together. As they stood at the door, scissors in hand, Rahim caught sight of the hospital janitor who had replaced him, smiling and giving a thumbs up from the back of the crowd. The sight reminded Rahim of how far he had come and how much further he could still go. Ready? He asked Amara, who nodded excitedly. Together they cut the ribbon, officially opening Amara's books to the world. As people streamed in, admiring the space and picking up books with interest, Rahim felt a presence beside him. He turned, half expecting to see Ibrahim, but there was only empty space. For a moment, just the briefest instant, he thought he felt Noor's hand on his shoulder, heard her voice in his ear saying, "You did it." It was probably just his imagination, but it felt real enough to bring tears to his eyes. "Baba, are you okay?" Amara asked, noticing his emotion. Rahim smiled down at her. "More than okay, John. I was just thinking that your mama would be very proud of us today." Across the shop, Ibrahim watched the scene with contentment. He had kept his promise to Samina at last. The bookshop lived again, filled with new energy and purpose, and Rahim, a man who had shown kindness without expectation of reward, had found his way back to a dream he'd thought was lost forever. As the day progressed, Ibrahim observed how naturally Rahim engaged with customers, recommending books with genuine enthusiasm, creating a welcoming atmosphere that invited people to linger and explore. Amara moved between helping her father and entertaining younger children with animated readings of picture books, her confidence growing with each interaction. By closing time, the cash register had rung up more sales than Rahim had dared hope for, and a community bulletin board was already filling with notes about future events, reading groups, author visits, children's story hours. A local teacher had asked if her class could visit weekly, and a university professor had inquired about holding a poetry workshop in the space. After locking the door behind the last customer, Rahim, Amara, and Ibrahim sat together among the slightly disheveled bookshelves. Tired but elated. "What a day," Rahim sighed, leaning back in his chair. "The best day," Amara agreed, though she was clearly fighting to keep her eyes open. Ibrahim watched them with fondness. "This is only the beginning," he said softly. "The story of Amara's books is just getting started." 3 months later, a small article appeared in a national newspaper. It told the story of how a poor single father had helped an elderly man at a train station, unaware that he was assisting one of Pakistan's wealthiest industrialists. It described how that chance encounter had led to the opening of a bookshop that was quickly becoming a beloved fixture in its community. The article went viral online, bringing curious visitors from across the city. Some came hoping to catch a glimpse of Ibrahim Hashmi, the reclusive magnate. Others were drawn by the heartwarming story of kindness rewarded. But most left with books in their hands and a reminder that sometimes the most significant moments in life arrive disguised as ordinary decisions.